Hey, Walking Dead fans, this will be a video on what about the French. If you remember back in season 1, Dr. Jenner at the CDC said it was the French. I think he was talking to Andrea, and Andrea had asked him some questions and stuff, and at a certain moment, he turns to her and says it was the French.
It was the French.
What?
They were the last ones to hold out as far as I know.
It was the French that were pretty much the last ones to hold out. He said the French was the closest to possibly figuring something out before everything went dark. And what he means by that, just like the CDC in Atlanta, the one in France lost power as well, and they just finally run out of power, of diesel. So ultimately, they just couldn't continue working.
While our people were bolting out the doors and committing suicide in the hallways, they stayed in the labs till the end. They thought they were close to a solution.
So Jenner said when people here were running out and shooting themselves in the head and all this kind of stuff, that the French stayed at it, stayed right till the end, that they thought they were close to a solution. That's pretty big words right there. They thought they were close to a solution. And Jackie was the one that asked what happened, and he said, same thing that happened here. No power grid. They ran out of juice.
What happened?
Same thing that's happening here. No power grid.
So what about the French? Are they even still around at all? Is anyone still around over there? Whatever they might have got close to finding, is that information still out there anywhere? But definitely if you've watched The Walking Dead all the way up to season 9, you know they don't ever talk about this anymore. They don't mention the CDC very much. They've mentioned it a couple of times, but they just mention it in a way that there's no hope, there's no cure, there's no CDC anymore. And none of that's really come up. And as most of us know, the CDC was not in the comics at all. And you know, Dr. Jenner whispered in Rick's ear that everyone's infected. And he told the group later on what Dr. Jenner had said. And no, Dr. Jenner didn't also say Rick's immune or Rick's special or anything like that. He simply said, everyone's infected. If you die, you're going to reanimate. Because at this point, the group didn't know that. They didn't know that at all. They didn't know if you died by normal causes, you would still reanimate. They just figured if you got bit by a walker, then you would get that fever, die, and reanimate. But one of the things several commenters had asked the question or have been talking about, where is Rick? And they're saying that Rick is in Europe because one of the reasons they say that is because Rick lives over there and he wanted to go back and stay with his family. So they must be shooting the movies over there. They're not, and I'm pretty sure it doesn't happen in Europe. That's just my prediction. We don't know yet, but I don't think that that's where it's going to happen. I don't think he went to France or anywhere like that. Yes, it's all plausible, but I'm pretty sure Rick's still in the States, and that's where it's going to be shot at. That's where the storyline will take place, in the States. But adding to this, which is a pretty big thing, is what Robert Kirkman has said. You know, the CDC wasn't in the comic, and he definitely has some creativity input into the TV show as well. He said, if I had to do it again, I wouldn't have done the CDC episode at the end of season 1. He said it possibly gave away too much information and was such a big change very early on in the series. Because in the comics, Rick and the group learn about everyone being infected after Tyrese's daughter, Julie, is killed in what's supposed to be a joint suicide pact with her boyfriend, Chris. When she reanimates without a zombie bite, Rick and the gang put the pieces together. And if you remember in the comic, Rick is thinking back like, damn, you know, he remembered killing Shane and didn't like stab him in the head or anything. And he had buried Shane. So he goes back and digs up Shane, who actually had reanimated and was a zombie. And he kills him at that point and doesn't rebury him, but that's a whole nother story. But I thought that was pretty funny that he thought about Shane. Damn, he must have reanimated. And he goes back and digs him up in the comic. That's pretty crazy. But Kirkman says, I feel like there might have been a better way to wrap up the first season. It ended up being a fun episode, and I love the character of Dr. Jenner, and I thought Noah did an amazing job. But there were things in that episode that I think seemed very much not of the Walking Dead world. And Kirkman goes on to say that inside that whole CDC thing that he regrets is a huge thing that he regrets. It's that Jenner revealed despite his research he hasn't been able to find a cure, but that the French may be onto something as their scientists were the only ones who remained in their labs during the outbreak. Kirkman said, I probably would have changed that stuff. I've been careful in the comic series not to say what's happening in other parts of the world. It's something that's going to be fun to explore in the spin-off series. But the fact that France is mentioned in that episode and other things like that, I probably would have steered away from that stuff if I had to do it all over again. So regardless of what's been going on in the comics, and he has been keeping a lid on it, we don't really know about the rest of the world in the comics, not like we do in the shows. But through Fear the Walking Dead and some other things, definitely a lot of things that's been happening, a lot of clues out there do show us it's a worldwide global event. And the comics have touched on it a little bit, especially with like the one-off comic called The Alien. It's about Rick's brother in Spain and what happened to him, but Spain is overrun. So you've definitely probably heard me talk about it before. I did a video on just the whole CDC scene, kind of explained, and I've talked about it in other videos as well, how Robert Kirkman didn't want this to be canon really even, the whole CDC scene episode. So definitely, if you ever ask yourself why they never talk about a cure, why they never talk about immunity, why they never bring up the CDC or the French again, what could have happened to the French, or should we go to France because it sounded like there's a little more, could possibly positive things happened over there? Mainly it's because Robert Kirkman didn't like all of that, didn't want to go there, and he hasn't went there in the comics. And as he said before, he didn't want his story to be about scientists and the military and that angle of things like most other zombie shows or stories do. He said he wanted his story, the Walking Dead story, to simply be about a group of survivors. So on the question of will we see another country like in the Rick movies, I don't think so. Will we see the French? Will we ever really find out what happened or visit France to see kind of what went down? You know, I would love to see a spin-off series in the future, even if it's 3 or 4 years from now, that is set in France and tells that story of the beginning, of as soon as the outbreak happens, and everybody staying and trying to find something and getting close to a cure or whatever it was that Dr. Jenner said that they might have been close to a solution of some kind. But we definitely got a lot of questions coming up about the Rick movies, the A&B mystery, the seemingly scientific things going on. Even Scott Gimple has said there's a sci-fi element to it. So who knows? I'm looking forward to seeing what that's all about. And if a lot of the stuff I've said is completely wrong and they actually do dive into that subject matter. So what about the French? It just seems like they got close to some type of solution, Dr. Jenner said, but the power grid went out and that was it. I just don't think there's any more to it. I don't think we're going to hear anything else about it. And it just seems like they don't want to talk about that kind of stuff. So here we are, right back at the point we started at. We don't know very much more than what the show has told us back in that CDC scene. That's about all we know. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Definitely stay tuned to the channel. I'll have a short web series coming out called The Blood Path, and it goes into a lot of this stuff that the show isn't going into. It's just a little tease of some of the stuff that you guys said you wanted to see. Definitely hit the notification bell. As always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more dead stuff.